All right. So, like I said, I'm Lauren with Headlight. I've been here for a whole of about 5 months now, so that's fun. And so I'm the senior customer success manager here to support LADOTD, the users, as well as the CEI firms. So it's been a wild ride and it's been super fun. And so I, like you, have enjoyed learning to use the system, and I hope you get something out of this session today. So, that being said, I always like to start all of our calls off with our shared mission statement here at Headlight. So, as you can see there, our mission at Headlight is to modernize the workflows of critical operations with trusted data, bringing that together and making sure that all of the data is available to you to make better decisions. So I say that to my children all the time. And so I certainly believe in that mission that by use of data that we are able to make smarter and better decisions. All right, a little bit of our agenda today. I'm going to go through just the power of Headlight, some of the aspects that you can expect to see in the system if you have not already dove into the system. And then Les is going to cover some of that workspace orientation for us. And then, of course, at the end, we're going to give you some resources and allow you the opportunity to ask questions. So when we talk about resources, of course, we'll get to that at the end. But just what Les said, there is definitely a YouTube channel that you have access to. So we have within Headlight, within Fieldbook, we have the Academy that you absolutely are welcome to utilize as you log into the system. There on your left navigation towards the bottom, there's a little option for the Academy. So that does primarily give you an overview of the different sections within Fieldbook. What I will say to you is that our friend Les has done a great job of also publishing a lot of LADOTD specific navigation tips on the YouTube channel. So again, that's all included here on some of these last slides. And so we will be distributing this out after the call. And so as we look to do that, I'm hopeful that you will certainly utilize all of that. All right. So as I talked about, we're going to talk a little bit just about those foundations that currently exist in the system, just basic knowledge for those of you that have not had an opportunity to get into the system. So the power of Headlight, what does that look like? What are we trying to accomplish and what are we trying to capture? So as we look at the system, certainly we put a lot of importance on visual documentation. Les and I yesterday looked at quite a bit of data overall from all the districts, and that definitely encompasses that visual documentation. So as most of you know, photos, that whole statement about a picture says 1,000 words. And so photos are treated as a core component of this system. So it does allow teams to capture more data. It allows you to communicate job site statuses more clearer. And then we're able to do that form-based system, and be able to capture some of that data as well. So as we talk through the data, of course, we know that data provides us that flexibility to be able to see not only just the work that we're doing every day and observations, but it also allows us the ability to share that information across teams. So we're able to look at data in multiple ways within the system. Like we just talked about, those images, those visuals is one way. We have spreadsheets, we have reporting. So all of that data together certainly is used to help you make a better decision, you as well as the team members. And so as we look to all of that, we want to make sure that we are looking at real-time data. So that's another great component of the system is the real-time access and being able to see that. So just as you can see there, very quickly in the morning, just at first glance, you're able to know what's happening on a job site. You're able to see those visuals. You're able to see the narratives associated with those visuals. And then with the use of tags and different things like that, we're able to identify what exactly is going on each of the projects. So as a PE or as an inspector, you're able to utilize all of this information in the system. Certainly something that hits home to a lot of folks is safety and risk mitigation. So that is another aspect of the system that really allows us to better capture information with that in mind, that we're looking out for not only ourselves and our employees, but as we look to those folks that are out on the road working on the projects, maybe there's something right in front of them that they don't see or they don't recognize. And so we're able to kind of take a look at those different images and narratives and work through risk mitigation and safety hazards with them. So that being said, any questions so far? And y'all, I know I do talk fast. So certainly if I need to repeat anything or if we need to stop for any reason, you just let me know. Does anyone have any questions regarding just these overall components of the system that we have so far? All right, good deal. So now we're going to go through three pretty common words that you'll hear in the system. Again, going into that just real-time data and the use of that just to make better educated decisions. So as we talk about the organizational structure of Fieldbook, we're going to talk about observations. So just as you see there, observations allow us to capture data in that narrative, media, and specialized formats. Those titles and descriptions allow us to add context to those observations. And of course, like I mentioned, you can utilize tags and labels and things of that nature to really break down each of those narratives so that they align correctly today with Site Manager. And so, of course, we are working very diligently to sunset the suite Site Manager. But as of today, that is something that we do is we utilize that tagging and labeling feature to help categorize. Those are also, all of those images and things are also automatically date and time stamped and geolocated in these observations. So all of those are great things to know as you are looking to utilize the system and create observations. All right. So as we look at projects, so projects is the next organizational structure that we're going to kind of talk through a little bit. And so just as you see there, you have access to the system to look at one project or multiple projects. Again, you can kind of see there on the right-hand side of this page, the different projects that you could possibly have in there. You can also see that on that left-hand navigation, there's some options for some different navigation there. Projects also contain all of the observations across the life of a project. Those projects can be viewed or searched by all members of the team. So that's super helpful. Again, just giving that transparency through different team members. Maybe you're not someone who goes out in the field all the time. You're more of an office admin type person. All of that can be viewed by all of the team members. So that's super helpful when we're talking about projects and observations. The projects also provide that kind of comprehensive record of an inspector activity. So all of the activities, all of the materials, things of that nature can all be housed in that project. So it's easily accessible and really not just by your team members, but like I mentioned, Les and I yesterday, we're kind of looking at some overall reports from the different districts to see kind of what's coming in, how many folks, how many images are we looking at, how many observations do we have per project. So it's really a good tool for us to analyze that data. And then last but not least, projects feature that robust search and filter capabilities. And so that's always super helpful because there is so much data included in one project. It does benefit us to be able to search and filter by certain pieces of data. So any questions on projects? And like I said, Les is going to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that. And we're going to look in the system, but I wanted just to get these basic foundation. All right. Last but not least, on just the foundation is reporting. So I have been in the software world for about 12 years now. And so needless to say, there's lots of data out there, but if I'm unable to digest it, it kind of makes it useless for me. So I'm always interested in reporting capabilities. So the reports through the Headlight Fieldbook app usually allow us to compile all of that data in an easy to read, shareable PDF format. We're able to configure those reports to best suit the need. And then certainly we want to make sure that there is accuracy in these reports. So within the reporting feature that you can kind of see here again on this bottom right hand corner of the screen, it does give you the ability to preview the report prior to submission so that you can check for accuracy and completeness. You can see a little sample report there, and we can certainly go through that. But one of the features of the report is certainly the ability to report on history. So reporting a history section to support just overall workflows is definitely something that's beneficial in the system as well. So again, kind of that organizational structure of observations, projects, reporting, all of those are really the foundation of Fieldbook and of what you're going to be doing on a daily basis, really, as you're using the system. And so with that being said, we are going to move more into just overall workspace orientation. And again, we're going to forward all this out to you after the call, but we want to give you just a guide to go by. So I'm going to turn it over to Les to talk through some of these items.
Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate you walking us through all that. So as most of you have already figured out, in this second iteration of our Headlight 101, we are just now getting to workspace orientation, and that's on purpose. Like, this is a slow roll of training. It is not throw it all at you at one time over some 3-hour session or 4-hour session. And so we are really taking this thing piece by piece. And last month, we gave you some tools on how to get help and where to find information where you can learn on your own and some of those resources and stuff. And like I said, this month we're kind of moving in more to the orientation. And I have joined on here on my iPad, so I'm going to try to share. Please bear with me. We're trying something new today. Lauren, can you make it to where I can share, please?
Yes.
So I'm trying to do this on my iPad. I don't normally do that. And so, like I said, just bear with us. Hopefully I can make this work right.
Okay, you're good.
All right. So we're going to start by opening our Fieldbook app here. Let me get me off of the screen because you don't want to see that. And I'm going to try to present. I just kind of put a slide deck into a PDF form here and made it to where I can share it over my iPad screen. A few things we want to talk about, like when we are getting ready to log in. Obviously, there are resources that we talked about last time on how to gain access to the system, how to get your password, that kind of stuff. So we're not doing all of that. But I wanted to start at this screen here and just show you one thing. Like, obviously, this is a login screen. Let me see if my mouse is working here. You guys should be able to see that. And so this login offline button, I just want you to remember that where that's at, because once I log in, you're not going to see that again. And we'll kind of discuss that a little while later. And then even the situations in which you would probably use that. So let's go ahead and log in here. I'm just using my Demo Fletcher account today. All right. So workspace orientation. I actually have my iPad set up kind of in a landscape view, or horizontal, which is side to side. I know that most of you kind of hold your iPad up and down, like in a vertical orientation when you're out in the field, taking images and that kind of stuff. Works the same. It'll just adjust when you rotate it and fit the screen one way or the other. So that's kind of a personal preference. We do like to have those images in a landscape view just because you get more information in those types of images, but that doesn't really matter for workspace orientation. So as you can see here on the slide, maybe I can even zoom in a little bit here. The main thing that you're going to be working off of is this side navigation here. Which is most of the app features that you need, right? You're going to have all of your tools like your journal and your spreadsheets, even down to the academy where you can get a little bit of training, and the new button there. You can see in the dashed line there, that is your main workspace. So I'm sorry, I'm also using a couple mouses here. So this main workspace here is where your observations and stuff are going to show up as you're creating them there. You can see here, this one is something that, believe it or not, I get questions about all the time when I send this to a new user or send them a login and they get in the first time. It's like, hey, I only have this one project. I don't know where to go to get to my projects. This doesn't look like it, but it is actually a drop down. And you can see here, so the project name and selector that we're pointing to there is this, and you can actually click on that and it will show your list of projects so that you can select and go into the one you want to work in. Obviously, we're just going to be in the training 2.0 today. View selector, and it's a good thing that I have a couple observations here so you can see how this works. These two things here, and obviously or I believe on the web, it's probably got, actually, I'm looking at it over here. There's 4 of these on the web version. So you get a little bit more granular on the web version, but it just changes your view, right? So if you have lots of observations here and you want to be able to find one quickly rather than scrolling, sometimes you can just change the view and find that faster. You have your select button here, which we have marked out as a select button, which allows you to, when you do that, you're going to be able to grab observations. You can see how the blue lights up around it to let you know that you have it selected, and also there's a checkbox. I'll cancel out of that. And obviously you have your green plus button. And this is where you really go to do work inside the journal, inside your workspace. When you're trying to make observations here, green plus button is always going to be your friend. That's where you go to add new observation types. And you can see there are a lot of those. Now, I'm not going to go into depth on this because that should be coming up in our next training. Right now, we just want to get you the orientation of where everything is. And then I'm probably going to need to move this out the way so that you can see over here. Top right corner. So the sync status and user menu. These 3 buttons here are not used all the time, but are very helpful and very useful. We'll start here with the user menu. You can see this has initials in it. That's my Demo Fletcher initials. And when we select it, we have several things here. Excuse me just a second. Let me get to my slide. All right. So the first one I want to talk about, actually, I'm going to save night shift till maybe the next slide. It's a little more in depth. So I want to talk about these other things. TriSync now. Your iPad, as you are making observations in the field, will automatically sync your observations. You don't really have to do anything. A couple of things to note is when you are creating an observation for it to sync, and what we mean by sync is here I am working in the Fieldbook app, and our whole goal is to get everything we put in the app into Headlight's main server so that it shows up on their web version. Right. So that is the goal of using the app, and when you're adding your observations and trying to get them to sync over, that's what we mean by sync. And so the one thing to note here is that they only sync when the screen is open. And so this is kind of a work flow problem sometimes for inspectors, at least it was for me. Sometimes I'm very quick. I'm usually moving out on the project when I was inspecting and trying to get stuff done. And so sometimes I would snap a picture, add that observation, close the screen, go to my next thing, grab a picture, write a narrative, close the screen, go to my next thing. And what happens when you do that is you're not allowing the system time to sync all those observations over. Then you start building all of these observations. You got maybe 20 or 30 of them that have not synced. Then you get into a bad service area and it tries to sync all that and you run into issues. The Try Sync Now button is your friend here. So one thing, if you're that kind of person who likes to close that screen, save battery and that kind of stuff, it's a good practice. 1 or 2 image, a couple observations, a weather or 2, hit that Try Sync Now button and try to get that information moved over to the server. Again, it's not necessary. You don't have to do it, but it's a good practice to kind of keep everything moving and moving over there where you want it to be. Next on the list, I'm going to skip send log data and I'm going to go straight to email support, and I'll tell you why. Email support, first of all, I think is just something we need to mention in general. Your first, okay, let's say you're out on the project, you're documenting a project and you run into an issue. My observation just disappeared. I have no idea where it's at. This stuff won't sync. I have 5 observations that will not go to the server. What do we do? What's that next step? When you run into a problem, that next step is not call less, right? I will usually answer. I'm happy to walk you through that, but those of you who do try to call me, you know that probably it's a couple hours before I end up calling you back. They have me in meetings all the time. I'm giving training, that kind of stuff. The same thing happens with Lauren, right? We are not that first step of support. Email support, or you call them. There's a number on the back of your iPad as well, but email is generally the preferred method. It's super easy, right? It's in the app, email support. Let me move this out of your way. If you hit that and your email is installed on your iPad, it starts the email for you. You type out, I'm having a problem with so and so, try to give as much detail as you can there, maybe a couple screenshots, and let support try to walk you through that. If it is something that the general support team cannot handle, it usually gets passed off to me and Lauren, and that's when we, get out of our meetings and have the time. We kind of dive in there and we'll help you out from that point. So just something to note there. Cancel out of this and delete it. And now let's go back. So we've talked about email support, and now let's go back to send log data. So what is that? Sometimes when support is trying to give you help, they need a little more information and they need some of that background data off your iPad. If support emails you back, and at this time it's usually Aiden or Elijah, they email you back from Headlight and say, hey, I need to see your log data. It's as simple as clicking this button, and we're going to actually do it here. It looks like nothing's happening. Something was happening in the background, and now you see this pop up where it says success, your data dump upload has completed. And then a lot of times they can use this information from your iPad to help get you the support that you need. Let's see if I can get my presentation back up. It looks like I closed it. So. All right. I want to make sure I'm covering everything here, so give me just a second. We are going to talk about the sync status and the wireless health a little bit later on. But in this portion of it, we just want you to know where they are. And also, the last thing on here that I kind of want to go over at this point is the search tab. I'm not going to go over in depth because there is more to come on this also. When you log in to Fieldbook, just know that this is kind of hidden up here, right? So you can see it, click on that search, it brings it down. I created these observations today, this morning, actually, when I was kind of going through this presentation, making sure I had all the bases covered. So I actually see something here, but what's going to happen is when you log in the morning, you log in fresh to the app, you are going to see nothing because the search bar is going to filter to today's date and your name. And when it does that, obviously, if you've not been at work yet and not started your shift, there's not going to be anything here, right? So you might be thinking, like, what happened to the things I added to this system yesterday? It's a simple date change, and we'll come back here. I'll just go back 30 days and click away. It's still only going to show these two things because it's on my name, right? So we'll get into this a little more on how you actually use the search bar. The main deal here is just showing you where it's at, that it's kind of hidden up here. And then if you can't see the things you need to see, most of the time it's because the search filters need to be adjusted, right? All right, so main menu, and let me move to the other side here because we're talking about the left navigation now. So this this side navigation or left-hand navigation, whichever one you call it, lots of things here. You actually have your journal, your spreadsheets. This is anything that we count, right, is your spreadsheets. Journal is what we, the who, what, when, where, and how that happens on the project. That's where we're going to be making observations of that stuff and putting them here. Counting things here. Reports, right? So we have to submit a daily work report on our project every day. That's the tab where those reports are going to live. Forms. For those of you who have been using this for a while, you know that we have been implementing forms over the past couple of years, and we have lots of those now. Mostly materials forms, but some are just general construction stuff. Project files. I'll be completely honest with you, I have no idea what this is. This showed up on my app recently, and I'm anxious to hear from Headlight what that is. So maybe in the coming weeks we can find out what the project files is, but it seems to be a little bit newer feature. Academy. This is a place where you can go get some training, right? So you're learning resources. I would say this is great. The iPad trainings are really good. There are micro tutorials. If you just need to get familiar with how to use an iPad, if you're an Android person, I was for the longest time when I first started using Headlight, and kind of have migrated over to the iPhone world. But if you just need help learning how to use an iPad, these resources are great. iPad 101 here. Fieldbook micro tutorials are great. They're teaching you kind of the same thing that Lauren and I are going through right now on this, and in the next couple of these training sessions. But I would say these are not DOTD specific. This is more of a general headlight training. But it is really nice that they're right in the app and easy to get to. And then also we have a new button here. Now back to journal, we were talking about the green plus button earlier being that place where we go to make observations. Well, the new button is very similar, except it has a little bit more stuff in it, right? Not just journal observations, but spreadsheet observations, reports, and form types. Okay, I'm saying a lot. I'm zooming through this like I normally do. You guys are used to my training style, but I want to pause for a minute. Are there any questions about workspace orientation up until this point?
I think something to touch on for new users is how you can edit your favorites, and you can add to your left-hand column. You can add like pictures, videos, and weather. That does make it easier than having to navigate. It just removes a few steps.
Yeah. Thanks, David. I knew somebody with experience was going to come over here and talk about that, because it's something that's really great. I do have that in my slide. I don't know where it's at. Maybe it's on the next one. Let me move to this next thing here. It's a little bit later on, David. I'm going to cover that in just, let me make sure. Let me go through here because I know it's in there, but I want to double check. Actually, I don't have it in my slideshow, so let's talk about it now that you brought it up. So the new button, like David said, when you click this, like I stated, it has your journal observations, spreadsheet observation, report types. Right up here at the top, we have this edit favorites button. And this was not here when I was in the field, but I do know about it. And I'm sure David uses this all the time. If you find yourself taking lots of images, when you select that, you can see it puts an image icon right here on your side navigation. If you are on a concrete job and you are just doing structural concrete forms all the time, you can add that. And it just gives you a really fast way. Probably the most common one is this My Daily tab. We'll get more into submitting reports in a future session, but just know that's probably one you're going to want to have over there. Actually, I'm going to take this ACP off of here. Image and My Daily are probably the most common ones. And just a way to edit your stuff. Super easy to put them in here or take them out depending on what project you're on and how you want your workflow to be. But thanks, David. Appreciate you bringing that up because that is very important. Just one little extra step to not have to click through, right? Just one easy click to do that. Any other questions? Right. Moving right along. So now let's go back up here towards the user menu. I told you that later on we would kind of go through and talk about a couple other things in here. Actually, I probably jumped ahead already and discussed some of this. But the main one I want to talk, we kind of discussed these already, but I want to talk about this switch to night shift. This one was definitely confusing to me when I first started using it. But I am so happy it's there, and you will be too if you get a night job. So the very first night job I did in Headlight, it was just a couple months. It was a regular daytime job, but a couple of months we had to pave at night, and I was using Headlight at the time. And so I started my shift at maybe 6 p.m. I started making observations. Along come midnight, no problem, still making observations. 12:01, everything I had done prior to that disappeared. And I was like, where did my observations go? Because I'm used to seeing all of my observations show up as I'm making them, right? So what happens is 12:01, it moved to the next day. So I had to reset my search filter to the day before and the day I was working on, right? The new day after 12 a.m. to show all my observations. And so that even becomes more of a problem the next morning when you're trying to submit your report, because if you hit My Daily on the day after 12 a.m., right, it's only going to capture the things that happened from 12 a.m. to when your shift ends. Let's just call it 6 a.m., right? And so it doesn't pick up everything that you did from 6 p.m. when you started to 12 a.m. So the remedy for that is the switch to night shift button. When you click this, and you can see here, it's kind of indicated by this little half moon shape or crescent moon shape. And what this does is when night shift is activated, it sets your iPad to collect your observations from noon to noon. When it's off, the day shift, it is from midnight to midnight, right? And so what happens is, obviously, if you're working a night shift and you come in at 6 p.m., you want it to start capturing observations, or like being able to collect all that stuff and put it in a report from the time that you get there to the time that you leave. And so it's going to go past that midnight when it's selected on your night shift. It's going to go take your observations past that and pull those into your report the next morning when you do that. It was, before I knew how to work that, I was having to not use my daily, and I was having to make sure my search bar was set correctly and manually select all of my observations to make sure they got in my report. And then probably Terry Hillis one time told me that, hey, if you just switch it to night shift, it does that automatically, and it probably helped me out tremendously. But anyway, just know that night shift is there. It's my hope that you guys don't have to work a night shift. I know sometimes that can be, of course, in the summer, it's usually pretty nice, but, I kind of like the day shifts, and I'm sure you do too. All right. Let me switch this back to day. Like I said, one of the things that you'll do most here is your log out, right? What do we do every night or every day when we get through with our shift? We're going to log out of the system. Why do we do that? So that the next time, the next morning or next evening when you come back to do your shift, when you log in, it's gonna pull all the newest data, right? If Headlight were to put out any kind of a update to their app, or the data from Site Manager changes, all that information needs to sync back in. So if you've logged out previously, when you log back in the next morning or the next evening, it's going to pull the newest thing, and you're going to have the correct data in your project. So any questions on night shift? I know that one gets some people, so if you have a question, that's a good time to ask it. Hopefully I explained it well. It's even very difficult to explain. All right.
We have a question.
Go ahead. Yep.
Is an iPad absolutely required for the inspector to have, or will it work with will the app work with another device?
That's a great question. So the app itself, so let me close this out here. So down here, for this app to work, it has to be on an Apple device, and it is made for iPad. Will it work on an iPhone? Possibly, but it is not going to be a good user experience if you do that. The iPad is generally the main thing that this app was designed to do. If you have any device, this could be an Android device. If you have some different iPad type device, a tablet, you can go to using Google Chrome, because it's optimized for Google Chrome, and you can get the Headlight Fieldbook here, right? There is the green plus button here that you can see. I can do this like I'm doing an image, right? And then you see this pop up, and this is the reason why we do not recommend this. When this pops up, is asking for your location permission, and you can hit yes, but this is not capturing all that metadata in the background with your GPS and that kind of stuff. A lot of time, this is going to throw your observation into a general location and not give that precise data that we need. And so we really recommend using the app. Is it possible? Yes. Sometimes it is necessary to log in on your iPad or other tablet, if that's what you have, to view some information there that's only available using the web version. But an inspector should be equipped with an iPad and the app. The only alternative there is Headlight does make another app called Fast Capture that is more optimized for an iPhone. Now it is, and we're not, going to go into too much detail there. It is not it does not have all the features. So it is not a full featured app, but it is great for capturing images and maybe videos really quickly, grabbing a quick narrative. It does work well for that. So I hope that answers your question. Like, yes, it is available using a web version on something, but inspectors should be equipped with an iPad to document in the field.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Actually, I just switched to this, but it's actually a good time to go over this. So in that user menu that we talked about, the one thing that's different now, I'm not in the app now, I'm using Google Chrome, and this is the web version. So you do get a couple more things here. So you'll notice the app didn't have all of this info. And so the one that I really want to call out here is this one called Profile. And I'm going to select it here. This logs me into my general profile. So you can go here to update your password and that kind of thing. But the main thing I want to show you is at the bottom of this profile. And this is moving away from our PowerPoint a little bit, but this is part of orientation and something I feel like you need to know prior to ever even making an observation. Down here at the bottom, you see these toggles. So this is all of the projects that this is my demo account. This is all of the projects that my demo account has access to. And these sliders are what actually shows up on the iPad. And so what's good here is you can come in, and if you're working on these 6 projects, you can select those. And then when you hit save projects to sync here, those 6 projects will show up in that drop down. What happens is when you've been inspecting for a while using Headlight, you'll find that project list gets longer and longer, and the longer that it gets, the more data the iPad's trying to pull, and things start loading slower. So my recommendation is always only have the ones selected that you're actually going to be working on in the immediate, right? So like if you this week you're only working on one project, it's super quick to come in here and turn off everything except for that one project. Maybe the training project if you want to go try something there, but you're not going to be pulling a whole bunch of data. But it's really great to be able to go in and turn those projects off so that your iPad is not trying to overwork and sync a whole bunch of stuff at the same time. So that's just a side tip you get. All right. So we've kind of exhausted the user menu here. So let's talk about this one. I'm not sure what this is called. Like, I guess it's the sync icon, because that's really what this is about, is syncing your data. Remember at the beginning, I explained that our goal is to make observations in the workspace and to get, and even in the spreadsheets and all of that stuff, and get all of that data onto Headlight's main server so it shows on the web version. And we talked about how to do that using the Sync Now button. There's one here, right? We talked about Try Sync Now, and there's also one here. This is the main one you're going to be looking at. Now, if you see green check marks, that means you're good to go. Everything that you've done in your report for the day has synced over, and it's green. So let's go here. I'm just going to run a test, and we're going to create an image, capture, and save it. Right, and you see a couple things have shown up here, and it's indicated by this blue 2. And now when we select it, it looks like we have a media file and an observation. And so now I'm going to hit sync now so you can see what happens. So when you see that orange bar, and it was pretty quick because I have decent internet here, right? When you see that orange bar, that means that image is uploading to the server. And again, the goal there is to make all of these green. So when you get 20 images in here, it's actually going to obviously going to take a little bit longer, right? But this gives you a good view to make sure that the things are going to the server like they're supposed to. I'm not sure how long this has been in Headlight. It was not in Headlight when I was an inspector. And so what I had to do was actually I would upload stuff, and then I would go to the web version to check and make sure that my stuff fully synced over before submitting my report. This is built into the app now and kind of gives you a better indication that you're good to go before you hit that submit button on your report at the end of the day. All right. And then next to that, go back to this. is also a relatively new feature. I think this maybe came out a year and a half ago, and it's called the wireless health icon. So what happens is your iPad, all of the iPads that are deployed for LADOT and even our consultants have built-in cellular service, right? If that service, if you're in an area where the service is not the greatest, you'll have usually would have syncing issues, right? So Headlight implemented this, and you can see there's a good line here that's indicated by the green dash and a bad line that's indicated by the red dash. So what happens is when your cellular service is not the greatest and it gets above this line here, Headlight will, if this is selected at auto, Headlight will automatically switch you to offline mode, which means nothing's syncing, right? So you're able to do everything that you would normally do on your iPad in the field to document a project. It's just not going to the server. So others at the office may not be able to see that at the time, but it's actually better for you and better for everybody that information is not trying to sync. So it's not trying to slow your iPad down. If it has bad service, it'll drain your battery much faster. And so really fortunate that Headlight implemented this so that it will automatically switch. Now, you obviously have the ability to just go straight online or straight offline here, which is super nice. And when you see I switch to offline, it just goes to red. Sometimes this is good just so if you're very busy throughout a day, like if you have a very, lot of stuff going on and you're taking lots of images and you just don't have time to leave that screen open and let things sync, switch it to offline real quick and just, work for an hour or two, switch it back on, make sure everything syncs over. And that's really helpful for making sure the data gets where it needs to go. But for almost all situations, auto is fine. I did point out at the beginning of this training that if you log out of the system, there is that log in offline button at the beginning that will kind of bypass all of this, and you'll just be offline your whole shift. And like I said, if you're in a bad cell area, that is the way to do your reports. You will find that everything works much better if you are in an area that just has very low service. Work offline when you get to a good Wi-Fi spot, or maybe at lunch, you go into town and there's a good Wi-Fi that you can latch onto there, log in online, upload all your stuff before you head back out to the job, and get that data over to the server. I find that this is not as much a problem anymore. Like this feature, when Headlight implemented this, has really reduced the number of tickets that I see come through about issues with syncing images and that kind of stuff. Because those are pretty data heavy, right? When we're doing images and video. And so there were often times where users were frustrated because their images were not syncing. And this seems to have cleared that up for the most part. Like I see that very rarely now, as long as somebody's keeping their software up to date and their app up to date. Any questions about wireless health? I do have one other tip here. I'm going to try to go to it. There is an app. Maybe I don't have it open. So you can see it right here in the bottom. It's called Speed Test, and it is available for you. I would usually use this when I was starting a project, especially one that I knew was not around town and might have issues with cellular signal. And I would go through the project. Let's say it's a 5-mile project, right? So I would start at the beginning, and then I would hit this button, go, and let this thing run a test for me. And it will start off by giving you your download time. You can see this average here running up in the 70s. That's really great for watching YouTube, but it's not so good for uploading a picture, right? Because this is download speeds. And so then it switches over to your upload. And I don't have to wait for this to finish. I know this is going to be a pretty decent upload speed because we're averaging like 30, even if it's 20. My recommendation is go through the project, run this at various locations to see where your service is. So if you have to work offline and you want to go upload some stuff, you can go to the spot that has the best service and upload your stuff there. That tends to be a better workflow and making sure that you get your data to the server. If this upload number is ever below, I would say 3 megabytes upload, you need to be working offline. every day, because less than 3, you're going to have sync issues and it's going to be a problem. So just another tip, there's another app there that can help you out. It's available in your self-service if you would like to download that. All right. We're almost done. I know I've been talking a lot and we're getting even closer to time here. Workspace orientation, so the search tab. Now, we talked about this briefly at the beginning, but I want to go into a little more detail. You have the ability to filter by user. Obviously, this is on me. If this is everybody who has access to the project. Any is usually a good view if you have 4 or 5 inspectors. That way you can see what everybody's doing, right? So if you just want to take a look at, especially if you're a supervisor out on a project and you're inspecting something, but you need to see what your people are doing, right? You can filter to their name or filter to any and see how the general project is going, not just the one thing that you're inspecting at that time. Good to note there, obviously the date, move this out of your way. You can go back in time, right, to view anything you need to view. I find that, when you're out on a project, usually 7 days or 30 days, these are the ones you're going to use, or maybe today. That just filters out. This is going to show anything in between this time and this time, along with these other selections here. It's going to filter your project down. Now, the search bar is not just good for making sure that you're seeing what you need to see, but it's good for the future, right? So my first project, which was like 7 years ago, I can very quickly today go back to that project and find observations that I made using this search feature and using tags, labels, that kind of stuff, and even observation types to figure out, in fact, this happened about 6 or 8 months ago. The mayor from the town called my old office asking about some information on the project. And they called me as like, hey, do you remember doing this? I was like, no, I'm getting old. I don't remember that stuff anymore, but let me go look at Headlight. And within about 5 minutes, I was able to put a report together using the search feature to send to the mayor as like, look, here's the information you're looking for. So that is a very powerful tool to be able to search your project later. And when you're creating observations, and we'll go over that in our next training, when you're creating observations, you adding that context to those observations is so important for your future self, right? Of making those tags and contractors, that kind of stuff, giving really good descriptions so that all that is searchable. Obviously, there's just a general box here, right, to search any word. So that searches titles, it searches descriptions, anything that's in a description or title or in a narrative. We talked about users. Labels have 4 categories. So you can search things by line item, by tag. If you see a tag with the number in front of it, that's just a mapping tag, but there are others that are just general tags. You're able to create your own tags throughout a project to make things faster for filtering later. Equipment types and contractors, right? So those are the labels you're able to search by. And then observation types is obviously if you only want to see images or you only want to see videos from the project, that's the way you would do that there. And then obviously there's a reset button to get it back to your standard. Questions about the search? Let me call your attention to this right here, because that's what I was just saying, but I want to say it again because it's important. Adding context to all observations with clear labels and descriptions creates searchable clues that help the system quickly retrieve information. Like, that's what you need to know. And you'll get better at that as you move along and use the system. Like you'll get to the end of the project and go, man, I wish I would have tagged these particular observations with this tag, and remember to do that on your next project. Okay. Last one. So as we move forward, we didn't do this much today. You didn't hear this much, but as we move forward and we begin making observations, this is something you're going to come across. If you're new to using an iPad and new to using this system particularly, this can be a little confusing. So let's just say this image observation, and I'm talking about tap away, right? So on this image observation, if I wanted to change it, I'm sorry, let me go back here. if I wanted to change this to another picture, capture it, you see I get like a green check here that lets me know, okay, you're done with this. That's I want to save it basically. So there are lots of things in Fieldbook that you don't get a save button, and one of those is tags. So this is a good way to describe it. Now, if we go back to the slide here, you can see this hand that I kind of overlaid on here is touching outside of that box, right? So if you select a couple things here, and I'm just going to select these three, and these are not tags that you would select together, but I'm going to select these three, and then you notice the only thing I get is a clear all. I don't get a save button. And so to add those three tags, all I'm going to do is touch outside of this box somewhere. That's what we call tap away. And so you'll probably hear that in the future as we're trainers. So just use your finger anywhere, you tap outside of that, and it adds the things that you selected. Super simple, but whenever you do it the first time, you're like, how do I save this information in here? And it can get confusing for newer users. So we want to make sure and we mention that. And thankfully for you, I'm done talking for the day. That was the last thing I had. So we'll open it up for just a minute for questions before I turn it back over to Lauren. What you got? All right. No questions. Lauren, I'm turning it back to you.
Awesome. Sounds great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Les, for going through all that. I found that super helpful, especially the night view. Certainly was very helpful. And then, like you said, adding all of that description to those just is good for your future self. And so I did, of course, want to share the resources, like I said, here at the end. We, of course, have access to the LADOTD YouTube channel. So if you do not know where to find that, just let us know. We're happy to get you the link to that. And that includes information and videos regarding Fieldbook, sample plan, and materials. As we showed today, you have access to the Academy within the platform. So that's there on that left-hand navigation. And then, as most of you have probably seen, we also distribute out a monthly newsletter, and you probably attend the monthly construction roundup. So we have lots of ways by which we are trying our best to communicate with you. I will tell you, certainly, like Les mentioned, for support, your best avenue is support@headlight.com. I can tell you now that Les and I, in addition to our support team, we do our best to look at support cases every week to say, okay, this is a major issue and we need some developers to look at this, or maybe this is something we can help troubleshoot. But your definite first line of defense is support@headlight.com if you're having any issues in the system. So in addition to that, like Les said, when you are submitting tickets, usually there's some pretty detailed information. Unless it's just a simple fix, they need some detailed information. So using that issue reporting form is always helpful because it has all of those pieces and parts on it. So again, if you need any support, if you need any help, just let us know. We're happy to work with you on that. And then as we look ahead to next month, so of course we're going to be hosting this in August as well. And so as we look ahead to the next session, we're going to be going over things like field exercises, bulk tagging, actually searching Fieldbook for many different things, and then intro to spreadsheets, which we know is a whole separate conversation. But that's just a little bit of insight as to what we will be covering in the August Headlight 101 session. So again, we appreciate you all taking your time today. We know we had a little conflict there at the beginning of this call, so certainly appreciate you listening in and your questions. Those were super helpful today. And then, after this call, we'll distribute out both the slide presentation as well as our meeting notes and minutes. And so if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We appreciate you and thank you for your time today.
Yeah.
Any other questions? You're more than welcome to put that in the chat. All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. Anything else from you, Les?
I'm good. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate y'all.
All right. Thanks, y'all.